Thank you, Chair. I've had a lot of concern regarding this legislation, and after what I've heard from the testimony so far this afternoon, I have even more concern, quite frankly. In regards to your point, Ms. McClellan, that traffickers are people that we don't encourage and we certainly have no time for. We share that view. But if we go back to Prohibition, when Prohibition ended, the people that were the happiest were the bootleggers. They're the ones that had the big bonanza that came out of it. They went from being illegal to legal. And most of these traffickers right now are prepared themselves very well for the inevitable passing of this bill and are quite prepared to go from illegal to legal. But that's a whole other story. The concern I have, and it was addressed partly by my colleague Senator Petitclerc and Senator Bernard, that is the minimum age use of 18. And it's a huge concern, regardless of if it's legal or not legal, because despite the testimony today by Dr. Ware, if you listen to the Canadian Medical Association, if you listen to the Association of Nurses across this country, if you listen to the Association of Pediatricians across this country, if you listen to the administrators of post-secondary and secondary education in my province, and I've met most of them, they've written to me, I've read their studies and their reports on it. Not a single one of these people that deal with teenage kids and people between the age of 18 and 21, CGIPs in Quebec, think this is a good idea. So I find it incredible that at bare minimum we don't recognize that every person in the medical field, and let's stop mixing medical use of marijuana with recreational use of marijuana, because a number of the questions and testimony today was addressed to medicinal use of marijuana, which has been legal in this country for a very, very long time. Recreational use on the part of teenagers up till the age of 24, it is undoubtedly recognized by every medical expert in this country have a harmful effect on their mental development. So I find it very difficult to accept as a parliamentarian that I will encourage that age group to use marijuana, knowing full well this is completely at their detriment. And with all due respect, if a police officer stops my 17-year-old at a park with a joint, I don't find it acceptable for that police officer to say, put it in your drawer and you can smoke it when you turn 18. It's harmful for him at 17, it's harmful for him at 18, it's harmful for him at 20. I think the government and we as legislators should do the reasonable thing at bare minimum. And I understand all the other objectives of this piece of legislation if we can go back and forth, but I can't understand for the life of me why we think 18 is an appropriate age to start. And to compare it to tobacco or alcohol or somebody signing up to fight for the country in the military, no, this is a psychotropic narcotic.
Tobacco.
No, they're not psychotropic medications. No, they're not.
Oh.
And doctors and doctors
Ware,
and doctors that have
you.
come before this Parliament to address the various committees have said this. Of course, minor exceptions are the case.
Can we hear the answer, please?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure I really heard a question. It was quite a powerful
The question
statement.
is regarding the age group of 18.
So why it should be allowed at 18. Well, there were a couple of things. One thing is setting an age at 18 does not encourage people over 18 to use cannabis. That is not the purpose, and
Doesn't
certainly in
discourage.
no language. No, but it sets an age at which an informed individual can make a decision to do something which is entirely in their right to do so. We're also concerned about the statements that you made about the detrimental effects. Yes, there are young people who will be affected by the early use of cannabis, especially those that are 12 to 15 years old. It is quite clear that the risks to the brain are much higher the younger you are. Those risks start to drop as you get older, and there's a certain point at which the risks start to become less and less significant. Whether you choose 18, 19, 21, or 25, you're already on the downslope of that risk curve. The maximum risk is at that very sensitive age of 12 to 16, and that is well protected within this legislation.
So why not lift?
So it's a balance.
Why not lift the limit
because
to
as
24?
Dr. McClellan, as Dr.
You can
McClellan,
call
I've
me doctor.
promoted you to a doctor, because Ms. McClellan has pointed out that there's a competing priority, which is avoiding the criminal prosecution of people who use cannabis at that age.
Which is the largest use cohort, and we know they will use anyway. They will be subject to the criminal law, their lives dealt with in a series of unfortunate ways. They will continue to purchase product that is cut with gosh knows what. They will feed the black market, and when you balance, and this isn't, if we lived in a perfect world, that, I mean, it's, I guess we would all strive for that, but that's not the reality. So you you have to balance, as legislators, you have to balance competing public policy objectives and come to a conclusion as to where the balance is best struck to achieve the public policy objectives that you decide are paramount. And that's what we did in this report. But to Mark's point, nobody is encouraging use. Look, if you ask me personally, I would prefer nobody ever used, right? I would prefer probably that nobody drank or smoked tobacco. But that is not the world in which we live. And therefore, how do we fairly deal with this particular substance in light of the social, economic, and criminal realities that we face as a country?
Okay, thank you. Senator Patterson.